Hi, good morning. Welcome back to Daybreak on this 9th day of March 2020. It's an important day because it is the second anniversary of the political handshake between President Kenyatta and ODM leader Raila Odinga. We'll be talking about that shortly. But first, let me introduce the panelists that are in studio. I have Adan Keynan, who is the Member of Parliament for Eldas. Karibu sana to the show.
Good morning, viewers.
We have Nelson Koech from Belgut. Karibu sana to the show.
Good morning, viewers.
I haven't seen you here.
Yes, this is my first time. In the show.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay, all right, we'll wait to see.
Thanks.
And then we have Ndinde Nyero, Member of Parliament for Kiharu constituency in Murang'a County. Karibu sana.
Thank you, Sam. Good morning, Kenya.
Good morning, Kenya. All right, and my name is Sam Gituku.
And my name is Nziki Biku.
Indeed, and we want to start by taking a look at what's happening on the two dailies. We start with the front page of the Standard. You'll see that the story there is about isolation. This is President Uhuru Kenyatta and ODM leader Raila Odinga attended a city football derby yesterday as Deputy President William Ruto declared for the second day in a row that he was fighting a lonely battle in government. So the Standard has said that Ruto is the man being isolated. Is it so, or is it that he's just being suspicious? There's a quote there that it is clear in Kenya now that people are being threatened that if you go to the DP's meeting, you will be taken to court. If you are seen with the DP or in his office or you are his friend, you'll be charged even for no reason. We'll be looking at the veracity of those statements, but what do you have on the front page of The Nation?
All right, this is the Daily Nation this morning. Uproar of a plan to impeach Ruto. Does Senate Minority Leader James Orengo have sufficient grounds to seek removal of the DP? He did say that this process will begin 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks from now, and he mentioned this over the weekend. Also, why is Kenya's economy on its knees? Uhuru completes a 2-kilometer run, but also details of the coronavirus can be found on page 10 and 11, including why the tourism sector is set for slump in the global deadly virus threat.
Right.
Yep.
It's very, very serious that we are getting to this. We'll also be talking about the preparedness of the country in as far as the coronavirus pandemic is concerned. But first, I see that story of President Kenyatta finishing the 2-kilometer run. Were you at the Beyond Zero run?
I did participate for the 10 kilometers.
Oh.
Yes.
What was your score? What was your time?
No, I had my children, so I was not that fast.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It was actually because of them that I attended the Beyond Zero marathon.
Do you consider yourself a good runner?
I try.
You try.
He is.
Oh, he is? Honorable Keynan? Were you there?
No.
Nyero?
I was running some other activities in Kenya.
Not practically running. Of course, that was the 5th edition of the Beyond Zero campaign, and it was the very first time that President Kenyatta is running, but also a very unique opportunity that we saw Deputy President William Ruto not in attendance, as well as Mrs. Rachel Ruto. But I want us to begin with the story that is on the back page of the Standard, if you have it, of The Nation, rather. A Somali leader agrees to meet Uhuru in Nairobi. This is the Somali President Mohamed Farmajo last evening agreed to Kenya's invitation to visit Nairobi, signaling the calming of tensions that rose last week on Monday. Just want us to take a look at some of the graphics of a statement that President Kenyatta released sometimes last week. I believe it was on Thursday. This was after the meeting of the National Security Council that comprises the President as the chairperson. There's William Ruto as the Deputy President. There's the CS of Defense, Monica Juma. And then after that, there is Ambassador Rochelle Omamo, who is the CS Foreign Affairs, Fred Matiang'i, the CS of Interior, and Paul Kihara, the Attorney General. And there are 3 more. Exactly.
Let's continue to take a look at these are the individuals that sit on the National Security Council. We also have Samson Mwadede, who is the Chief of Defense Forces, Philip Kameru. We also have Hilary Mutyembai, our IG.
Right. Yes, and of course the statement from State House said that events of the March 2nd amounted to an unwarranted attack by foreign soldiers with the intention of provoking Kenya, and Kenya acted with total restraint. He was referring to the chaos that we saw in Mandera the other week.
He continues to say that claims of interference by Somalia are part of a growing, persistent pattern of ill intent to use Kenya as a scapegoat to justify the challenges in Somalia for political reasons. He goes on to say how Kenya will not accept to be used in that manner.
All right. There is something else that he said. Kenya has paid a heavy price. Kenya hosts hundreds of thousands of Somali refugees, and the price is also to do with the attacks of the Al-Shabaab. Somalia should urgently and exhaustively seek broad political consensus between the federal government and member states, and these efforts are imperative. All right, so we will continue with the statement of what the president told the Somali government. But yesterday we know that CS Fred Matiang'i led a delegation to Somalia to hold talks after a phone call between President Kenyatta and President Farmajo, and you are told that the pressure from the US and mediation by Ethiopian Prime Minister saw the two leaders speak on phone on Thursday. A direct call, it was presumed, would help de-escalate the tensions, which observers had warned could benefit the militants. And Somalia is due for elections later this year, and the US is worried a security plunge could jeopardize the plans that include gradual withdrawal of AMISOM. And I want to begin with you, Honorable Keynan, because you come from the region that neighbors, from the county that neighbors Mandera, and you've seen the events there. I mean, when you look at the tiff between Somalia and Kenya, what should we be looking at? Is it genuine attack from the Somali government? Is it that Kenya is frustrating its efforts to be an independent and sovereign nation?
I think first it's good to understand what constitutes diplomatic engagement between two independent sovereign states. It's also good to have the facts. Kenya and Somalia are neighbors. That is historical, and there's nothing that we can do. It's something that we'll have to live with. Two, each country's diplomatic engagement is defined by the national interest of that particular country, and that's what constitutes the first rule of diplomatic engagement. Now, that being the case, we are neighbors. Each country has its own national interest. There are serious, shared, sometimes conflicting security challenges, and therefore, historically, there are issues that we must live with. There are communities that live across the borders. Sometimes there is one tag, which is it's one tag that has been on since independence, which has been used derogatory, and that is the tag the Kenyan Somalis. You see the recent
census, yes.
That tag has always been there since independence. Ask yourself, there are more Maasais in Tanzania than Kenya.
Right.
There are more Luos in southern Sudan and Sudan than even Kenya. There are more Taitas in Tanzania than in Kenya. There are more Boranas in Ethiopia than even in Kenya. Why that tag? Why that tag?
Kenyan Boranas.
Yes. Why that tag? Kenyan Somalis. That gives you the magnification of issues that sometimes that touch on the Somali community. Having said that, it's also true that since Somalia plunged into a civil war in 1991, Kenya has really been kind to the people of Somalia in terms of humanitarian assistance, in terms of security assistance, in terms of institutional support, in terms of call it everything, because Kenya is a responsible member of the international community.
Right.
So we have used everything at our disposal to stabilize Somalia, meaning we have made a lot of investment emotionally, financially, security-wise, in everything. And therefore, this is a baby that we have been nurturing since Somalia plunged into a civil war. What remains right now is to make sure that we continue nurturing that process until Somalia becomes or gets institutions that will function in accordance with the way an independent entity is expected to function.
But where do we draw the line? Because part of the Somali, I mean, the reason why we are told that the Somalia National Army was in the country fighting the Jubaland security forces is because apparently it is claimed that Kenya could be hosting a fugitive, a security minister from the Jubaland. I mean, how far can a country like Kenya go?
And that's why I think we need to go back to what I said. Our engagement with Somalia is defined by our national interest. I may not be privy to some of the things that happen at the security level, but as a former chair and a person who's well-versed with certain security aspects of our diplomatic engagement, I'll say this for free, that Kenya and Somalia need each other more than ever before.
Right.
Right now, we have the issue of militarism, we have the issue of Al-Shabaab, we have so many challenges. And therefore, it is the high time that we use, whether we'll use track-one diplomacy, whether we'll use track-two diplomacy, whether we'll use military diplomacy positively, whether we'll use humanitarian diplomacy, it's the high time that we'll continue to open dialogue.
Right.
We'll continue to have dialogue. And that is the only way we can resolve. There will always be issues. There will always be issues.
That's right. And Honorable Nelson, speaking of dialogue, how do we as a country balance the politics of the region but also the diplomatic relationship that these two countries have, also keeping in mind that these two countries also have a court case?
Zinzi, I first of all sit in the Defense Committee in Parliament. And Farmajo has been spoiling for a confrontation with Kenya. And Kenya has acted in extreme restraint in this matter. First of all, like my colleague did say, there are many things that you must look. What is happening in the region? What's happening in Somalia? Somalia is going for an election. And Farmajo now seems to be itching for a confrontation, maybe to use it for his own political reasons. If you realize there's been a gang, the former presidents have ganged up against him. It's a very formidable team. And to say you are following a fugitive to Kenya, do you follow with a whole army? That is wrong. Somalia has its own issues, clans and all that. Let them sort out their issues and respect Kenya's
So how do we strike this balance, Honorable Nelson? The fact that at the end of the day, as a region, we have one common enemy, which is Al-Shabaab, but we also have the Jubaland and Somalia political relations. And at the end of the day, we still, as an independent country, have a relationship with Somalia. That
is the first step that Somalia should have taken. There are things that happen behind the scene. There is diplomacy. You should have engaged with the Kenya government and say, you know, there's a fugitive in your country. How do we go about it? You don't necessarily have to stage an affront on a country that has really assisted you. I thought that when neighbors do, when a neighbor's house fight, a husband and wife fight, and they run to your house, you don't kick them. The best thing to do is to engage them and talk and have a lasting solution so that they can go back and live peacefully. That is what Kenya has done.
You've articulated your seat on the defense team here in Kenya. Do you think that we should pull back our troops? Where do you stand with that? Because that seems to be the one that always tears.
I think everything that is done should be done with clear knowledge that, you know, first of all, our interest in Somalia was to get rid of Al-Shabaab. Have we gotten there? Is Kenya at peace, and is Kenya not at risk anymore of attacks from Al-Shabaab? When we are clear of that, then I think our troops can pull back.
Honorable Nyoro, why can't our troops come and just secure our border?
I may not be very well versed, especially in that line, but diplomatically, generally, I'd want to say that in the whole issue about Kenya and Somalia, I, number one, want to side with Honorable Keynan, that countries are led by self-interest. It could be, national interest, but sometimes we confuse national interest with self-individual interest. And the reason why I'm saying that is because if you look historically, even from the time of dynasties, in the many centuries back, if you look at Europe in the 16th century, and so forth and so on, you'll see that even in the US currently, you'll see that some leaders use diplomacy and use war to consolidate nationhood. And the best way actually to consolidate within is to look for an enemy without. That has always been the rule of engagement, especially to losing leaders. That for you to consolidate your base, you have to look for a common enemy outside there, so that now the small fracas within disappear, of course, to fight the foreign external enemy. And I think that is what Farmajo is trying to do.
Here's the thing, Honorable Ndindi Nyoro. The fact that, and allow me to attach this with BBI, because at the end of the day, the Council of Governors, one of the things that they recommended is that Senate should also have their powers to improve international treaties. And we're having a conversation here on international diplomacy. Do you agree with that recommendation?
Let me not first go to the BBI, but
I think on international treaty.
Let me finish. Let me finish. I think the best basis on which to rely on in this argument about international treaties is something that was signed in 1648 in Westphalia, called the Westphalian Treaty. It is actually the one that guides the new current world order, where now countries, however small or big, are countries. That a country like Kenya, which is big in Africa, our president is His Excellency, and a small country like Seychelles, with a population of 100,000, their president is also His Excellency. And when they meet in any international function, they are regarded the same. And that the basis of that is that prior to Westphalian Treaty, countries used to engage in terms of domination. That for you to cooperate with the other person, you had to conquer them. We had countries, of course, enlarging their territories geographically, because the way for diplomacy then and the route of diplomacy was that of domination. But now, currently, the New World Order, we use cooperation, where yes, we respect each other. Let us continue working on our self-national interest, but you also give the other country to work on their self-interest, but with constraint. But I think what is lacking in terms of Somalia is that constraint. And Farmajo, as I said before, is using this stuff and is using this kind of spat so that he can consolidate the other clans in Somalia for his own re-election, for his own personal interest.
All right, Honorable Adan,
I think there are two things. First of all, diplomatic engagement is not just done out of the blue. There are rules, there are modus operandi. We have the Vienna Convention,
right,
which governs the way countries relate, the rules. I think there are certain things that we must accept as a reality. It's a reality that the nation state of Somalia has so many challenges. It's also a reality that we are a neighbor. But I think there are certain things that we must accept and start addressing them. Ministry of Foreign Affairs is supposed to be the interface between Kenya and the outside world. The question is, taking into account what has happened since between 2013 and now, and the changes that we have seen, have they met the expectations of the people of Kenya? That is one. Secondly, Kenya is not just an ordinary state. Kenya is a premier nation. Kenya is a regional economic hub, a regional diplomatic hub, a regional security hub, a regional humanitarian hub, call it everything. For us right now just to be drawn into a conflict with a country that we have been assisting over the last 20 years, in my opinion, is an insult. It's an insult to our own existence, it's an insult to our sovereignty. So I think what we need to do, and I like what His Excellency President Uhuru Kenyatta has done, that engagement is what we require. Two, there's a statement the other day C.S. Matiang'i has made. There are certain conflicting business interests also, which needs to be addressed. You talked about the issue of contraband. Ask yourself, Kenya, first of all, supports, and I can vouch for this, the territorial integrity and the unity of the Federal Republic of Somalia. It's in our interest that Somalia remains one entity. Jubaland is one of the federal units within Somalia. The reason why our armed forces are there in Somalia is because of two reasons. One, to protect our borders. Two, Kenya, as a responsible member of the international community, we were duty-bound to be part of the EU mission.
Right.
That's why our team, our armed forces were rehatted. Initially, we have gone there as our own Kenya security forces, but later on, we were rehatted and become part of the AMISOM force.
Do you think our troops should come home?
Have we achieved what we intended, what forced us actually to be there? The answer is no. The withdrawal of our armed forces should be determined first and foremost by the security of the people of Kenya.
One would argue that we should secure our borders.
That is now the other thing. That is the reason why countries, like now, the reason why we fetch, and I thought that was the first thing that we'll have done, is to create a buffer zone. Complete a buffer zone that will make sure no Al-Shabaab remnant or member will get an opportunity to cross into Kenya. That has been very difficult. Two, the other day, C.S. Matiang'i talked about contraband goods. Ask yourself, the port of Kismayu is under the firm grip of our armed forces. Where does the contraband good pass through? How do they end up in Nairobi? Who are the beneficiaries? The sugar that you consume here comes from that route. Who are the beneficiaries? And that's what the C.S. Matiang'i the other day talked about. I thought by now he will have made arrests.
On who is involved?
Or the individuals involved, and those are some of the funds actually Al-Shabaab is using to get funds. So there are a lot of intrinsic. There is business conflict, but I think there's one thing right now I'll really request His Excellency the President actually to do, to whip and ensure that Kenyans don't get involved in the politics of Somalia. The reason is there has been a lot of interference. One group does this, another group does this. Really, let's allow the engagement in a civilized, in a courteous manner. Because like one group does this, I don't agree with the sentiment that this thing is driven by clans. It's not true. It's not true actually. That is defeatist. Of course, Somalia has its own challenges. Farmajo as a leader has the same challenges as any other president or a person whose country has been bedeviled by security crisis will also face. But I think we must, as a country, also go back to the drawing board and ensure that some of the missed opportunities in our relation with Somalia, not only Somalia, because really, the other day, one of the senior Ministry of Foreign Affairs officials talked about the emergence of a Cushitic economic bloc. That was an insult. Kenya is a leading nation. We are demeaning our image. The individuals at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs should at all times be prepared to promote Kenya, to project Kenya, and to protect Kenya as a premier nation, not Kenya as a small nation, the way they want us actually to appear in competition with some of the regional states. And therefore, if there's an emergence of a new economic bloc, why Kenya should not take advantage? Because our interest is economic development and being a leading beneficiary. Just like we have always said, we are leading economic hub. These are things that we must also address so that those who are tasked with being the managers of our foreign policy issues must also be prepared to understand the dynamics and at all times be prepared to have Kenya's national interest as the first agenda in their foreign policy excursion and engagement with other entities.
Right.
All right. I'm looking at the delegation that went to Somalia, led by Fred Matiang'i as the CS Interior. Major General retired Lucas Tumbo, he is the envoy of Kenya to Somalia. Lieutenant General Robert Kibochi, the Vice CDF, and Moffat Kange, who is the Secretary of Interior. I know Fred Matiang'i sits at the National Security Council, but I'm just wondering, is he the right person to lead such a delegation, or should it be the Minister for Defense, or rather the Minister for Foreign Affairs?
I honestly expected the Minister of Defense, because I mean those are people who are privy to engagements that we have in terms of military between Kenya and Somalia. And I don't know, I mean, they all sit in National Security Council, unless he was briefed. And Monica Juma is someone who has both been in foreign affairs and now in defense. She has huge knowledge of what has been going on. She's been leading our country in International Criminal Court of Justice on Kenya Somalia maritime. She has engaged the Attorney General. She has vast knowledge of exactly what the disputes between Kenya and Somalia is. I think she will have been best placed to have gone.
Honorable Nelson, one quick question though. Sorry to cut you short. Is there any woman who sits on the Defense Committee? Just a quick answer on that one.
Yes, we have 3 women actually. 3 women. Honorable Wangare, Honorable Gogo, and Honorable
Gender must always come.
Look at that picture, Honorable Adan. Look at that picture.
But I think he has asked a very pertinent question. Very important question. The composition of the delegation that went to Somalia itself from Kenya clearly demonstrates something. And maybe that is an attempt, a belated attempt, to address some of the missed opportunities. We accept that Matiang'i is the chief coordinator right now. But the absence of senior representative from Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Defense also so well represented. And the mere fact that the person who is in charge of, who coordinates ministers and also who is in charge of the Homeland Security is the person who is telling. Meaning, His Excellency the President right now is attempting to address some of the issues that maybe might have missed the attention of the Foreign Affairs Mandarin. And I think these are things that we must also address. And I believe right now, because at that level, with Matiang'i's involvement, with that direct leverage, I think some of the issues will be sorted out because Somalia needs Kenya.
Okay.
More than ever
Something
before.
quickly about that picture. Yes, if you can just...
you want the picture again? If you can have the picture of the delegation to Somalia, there it is.
You see, even in diplomacy, you don't allow to have one flag when you're having a meeting of 2 countries. We will have had a Kenyan flag. It's not
that's
there.
The only
but because none of these guys is private to anything diplomacy.
No, of course not. We have, I think with due respect, we have Ambassador Tumbo. Ambassador Tumbo who is...
ambassador is there.
But we should have... Then he missed it out. We should have had a flag.
Maybe the circumstances...
I'm waiting to hear the comment of Honorable Nyoro here, especially on the delegation that went to Somalia.
I don't think our engagement with Somalia is purely about defense, but even talking about defense, Sam, we have to be honest with ourselves. What is actually the role of CS defense in our country? To my understanding, these are just people to fill our positions.
Is it?
Because they have no capacity to make any defense decision. Even looking back, if you ask any Kenyan who was the defense minister before the current one, not many Kenyans would recognize that. Because the structure of DOD, and of course having the commander-in-chief, I don't think there is an opportunity in between for any other person, and especially in terms of far-reaching decision-making. But also, we have to look beyond defense and foreign relations, and look at the engagement between Kenya and Somalia on other respects. And when I talk about the other respects, I want to say that Kenya has paid a great price for the last 10 or so years in stabilizing Somalia. Kenya has paid huge cost in terms of money, huge cost in terms of even losing lives, and therefore, the issue of actually the delegation having defense and etc., I don't think it is anything for us to discuss so deeply, because our engagement and the effects of the war between Kenya and Somalia, and especially Al-Shabaab, is beyond a matter of defense. It goes beyond that some.
Okay.
And I think Honorable Keynan tried even to explain about some other things, business resistance, etc., all these cartels. So for me,
all right,
I think the president sending the people who are closest to him, he must have known why he was doing that. But also,
I think
the issue of border, I want to close with it.
Yes.
If you look historically for the last 10 years, and especially attacks from Al-Shabaab, have we had many, where do we have attacks? Is it around the border or actually within our what I would call mainland Kenya? So that now we can look at the security of our country, not just in terms of having a border or a buffer zone, but in terms of actually annihilating the threat that is now the terror group.
All right, I want us to move on and just to pass the apologies of Tim Wanyonyi, the Member of Parliament for Westlands. He had committed to be here this morning, but unfortunately woke up feeling not so well, so he's not able to come. He has spoken to us now. We want us